Hello, hello, truth seekers all over the world. This is Matthew from Back to the Covenant. Hope you're having an amazing day wherever you're at in this big, beautiful world. Actually, I can say Shabbat Shalom too because it's Sabbath. So this is going to be the second installment of the Testing Jubilees series I'm doing, and I'm blessed to have a local brother who's very passionate about some of the stuff we're going to read in chapter 6. We'll get into that. So we're going to be looking at chapters 6 through 10, and there's some interesting stuff in chapter 8 as well. So let me say hello to a couple peeps in the chat, and then I'll bring him on. Mr. Drew Bishop, Tracy Jones, Homesteading Hustle, Donna Porter. There's Mr. Tyler Porter. What's up, bro? FE Nation and Mike Finn. Let's bring Mr. Bishop on. Shabbat Shalom, sir.
Shabbat Shalom.
How you doing? How's your Sabbath so far?
I've been great so far.
Nice and restful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got a good night's sleep and I needed it. A lot going on. I can't say on the homestead over here, but y'all willing soon we can say that. So if you're ready, we're going to jump into it. We're going to look through Jubilees 6 through 10. I know you have a lot to share on chapter 6. So if you want to, we'll swap off reading.
Okay.
Guess I'll go first. This is a sizable one. Maybe I'll let you read some of the moon stuff.
All right.
Verse 1. And on the new moon of the third day, he went out of the ark. So we're talking about Noah's flood here. He went out from the ark and built an altar on the mountain, and he made atonement for the earth. That's very interesting because there's a lot of sin that was cleansed. So that makes sense. And took a young goat and made atonement with its blood for all the guilt of the earth, for all that had been on it had been destroyed, except those that were in the ark with Noah. And he placed the fat of it on the altar, and he took a bull and a goat and a male goat and salt and a turtle dove. We're checking all the boxes here, the animals. And a young pigeon, and placed a burnt offering on the altar, and poured an offering on it mixed with oil, and sprinkled wine, and spread frankincense over all, and caused a sweet fragrance to arise acceptable before Yahweh. And Yahweh smelled the sweet fragrance, and he made a covenant with him that there should no longer be a flood to destroy the earth. We kind of see that in Genesis, don't we? That yes, all the days of the earth, seed time and harvest, should never cease. You can see that in Genesis 8:22 as well. Similar language. Hot, cold and hot, summer, winter, day and night should not change their order. That's very important. Should not change their order. That's I'd say the emphasis of this chapter. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Nor cease forever. And you increase and multiply upon the earth and become numerous upon it, and be a blessing upon it. The fear of you and the dread of you I shall inspire in all that is on the earth and in the sea. You got anything to say on that before we jump to the next verses?
Not on this one. The only thing I'd say is usually where it says new moon, it's head of the month. So I would see this as being the first day of the third month.
You mean the fourth month?
In the first verse, it says on the new moon of the third month.
Yeah, sure.
That would be the first day of the first month or third month.
Makes sense. If you want to get these.
Okay. And see, I have given to you all the beasts and all the flying creatures, coming all that moves on the earth, and the fish in the waters, and all matters for food as green plants. I have given you the matters to eat, but flesh with its life, with the blood, you shall not eat, for the life of all flesh is in the blood, lest your blood of your lives be required. At the hand of every man, at the hand of every beast, I shall require the blood of man. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of Elohim he made man, and you increase and multiply on the earth. And Noah and his sons swore that they would not eat any blood that was in any flesh, And he made a covenant before Yahweh Elohim forever throughout all the generations of the earth in this month. On this account, he spoke to you that you should make a covenant with the children of yours, rail in this month on the mountain with an oath, and that you should sprinkle blood upon them because of all the words of the covenant which Yahweh made with them forever.
I mean, where do we start? There's a lot here. So
Yep.
the first thing that jumped out to me is in verse 8, it says, for in the image of Elohim, he made man. So if y'all haven't already seen, and I have a slide later about the Nephilim show we did a couple of days ago, me and that local brother, Randy Smith, that's a huge part of why the flood occurred, because the watchers, or the sons of Elohim, how it's worded in Genesis 6:4, came down from their heavenly abode and mated with the daughters of men and corrupted that perfect image that the Father made. So that's one thing that jumps out to me in these verses.
So verse 10 right here shows that is Shavuot being observed. They're making the covenant on the mountain with Yahweh.
Yep.
We're going to get into that in the next few verses too. It'll explain it a little better.
A little more depth. And then there's something else in this. I'll wait till later because I got a slide on it.
All right.
So verse 12 through 14. And this witness has written concerning you that you should observe it continually, so that you should not eat on any day any blood of beasts or birds or cattle during all the days of the earth. And the man who eats the blood of beast or a cattle or of birds during all the days of the earth, he and his seed shall be rooted out of the land. You shall command the children of Israel to eat no blood, so that their names and their seed may be before Yahweh our Elohim for continually. And for this law there is no limit of days, for it is forever. They should, that should be shall, apologize. They shall observe it throughout their generations, so that they may continue atonement on your behalf with blood before the altar. Every day and at the time of morning and evening, they shall seek forgiveness on your behalf continually before Yahweh. That day may keep it and not be rooted out. So we keep seeing the phrase, no limited days, forever throughout your generations, just like we see all throughout the Torah. Similar language. I will present again. I think the same person wrote the Torah that wrote the book of Jubilees.
I would agree.
And they jive so well together.
Mm-hmm.
You got anything on this one?
With the blood, so we see that they're not supposed to eat blood, but in the next few verses we're going to see that Noah and his sons, after Noah's passing, they go back to eating the blood. They go back to their wicked ways.
Yeah, that's something that happens, and you can see it all throughout Scripture, is that righteous leader dies, and they don't have that righteous leadership anymore. Mm-hmm. They're like, well, I'll just go back to all this sinful behavior. You see it time and time again throughout Scripture. Vicious cycle. You want this one, brother?
Yep. And he gave to Noah and his sons a sign that there should not be a flood on the earth again. He placed his rainbow in the cloud for a sign of the everlasting covenant, that there should not be a flood again on the earth to destroy it in all the days of the earth.
I mean, there's not much we need to say here. Everybody knows Genesis talks about this. I don't know. Do you want to talk about maybe we can talk about the double rainbow really quick since we're on it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I don't know where everybody's at in the research with the firmament, but I know Drew would agree with what I'm about to say. And I regret not putting a double rainbow on here, but if you go on your phone or your computer, electronic device, just look up double rainbow. So the top rainbow, it reflects off the firmament, and if you compare the colors, the top rainbow is the opposite of the colors of the bottom one. anytime you look at it, this is always true. So to me, this is proof of the firmament, and because it has a dome shaped as well. So there's two ways you can see that this is proof of the firmament.
It's like a reflection in a mirror. It's reversed.
And Vader Bear in the chat said every rainbow is a double rainbow. Actually, so I guess you don't always see the second one. So there's that. Because a lot of times you look up a rainbow and you'll see what's on the screen right now. And I've seen them in person too, so I haven't always seen the double one. I guess the second one is not visible always.
For this reason, it is ordained and written on the tablets of the Shamaim that you should celebrate this festival of Shavuot in this month once a year, to renew the covenant every year. And this whole festival was celebrated in the Shamaim from day one of creation till the days of Noah, 26 jubilees and 5 weeks of years. And Noah and his sons observed it for 7 jubilees and 1 week of years, till the days of Noah's death. And from the day of Noah's death, his son forsook it until the days of Abraham. And they ate blood, but Abraham observed it, and Isaac and Jacob and his children observed it, up to your days. And in your days the children of Israel forget it until you celebrated it in anew on this mountain. And you shall command the children of Israel to observe this festival in their generations for a command unto them. One day in a year, in this month, they shall celebrate the festival, for it is the festival of Shavuot and the first feast of first fruits. This feast is twofold and of double nature, according to what is written and engraved concerning it. Celebrate it. Jubilees 6:17.
Yeah, we got a lot on this slide too. So one thing is it's interesting in me. So a lot of people will teach and believe that the Torah wasn't official until Exodus 20 when he went up on the mountain. But here we have where Shavuot was being observed way back in Noah's time, during the days of Noah. So it's very interesting.
Not only that, it was being observed from the day one of creation.
Yep.
So it's being observed in the Shamaim.
I mean, it makes sense because the heavens or the earth is just a pattern of what's going on in the heavens. So it makes a sense. And then we see that Shavuot is a double nature festival, which is cool. It's also first fruits. The many interesting details we get in the Book of Jubilees that we don't get in the canon. All right, let's dive a little deeper. It's going to get worse the more we read this chapter. Or better, depending on your outlook. 22 to 27. For I've written in the book of this first Torah, and that which I have written for you, that you should celebrate it in its season. There's that word again. Very, very significant. One day in the year, and I explained to you its slaughterings, that the children of Israel should remember and should celebrate it throughout their generations in this month, one day in every year. And on the new moon of the first month, and on the new moon of the fourth month, and on the new moon of the seventh month, and on the new moon of the 10th month are the days of remembrance. We'll definitely have to touch on that before we move forward. And the days of the seasons in the 4 divisions of the year, these are written and ordained as a witness forever. And Noah ordained them for himself as festivals for the generations forever, so that they have become thereby a memorial to him. And on the new moon of the first month, he was told to make an ark. And on that day, the earth became dry, and he opened the ark and saw the earth. And on the new moon of the fourth month, the mouths of the depths of the abysses beneath were closed. And on the new moon of the seventh month, all the mouths of the abysses of the earth were opened, and the waters began to descend into them. And on the new moon of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains were seen, and Noah was glad. So here we have in verse 23, it says, on the new moon of the first month, new moon of the fourth month, new moon of the seventh month, new moon of the 10th month are the days of remembrance, and the days of the seasons in the 4 divisions of the years. So here we have a lot of people say, well, scripture isn't a science book, but so here we have, and we believe Jubilees is scripture, so that's why we're doing a series, and to help other believers see that. But here we see some evidence in the 6th chapter of Jubilees, the equinoxes and the solstices, the seasonal change days. That's, from my perspective, is what this is explaining. What do you think about that, brother?
I would agree with that. So the new moon, when I see new moon in scripture, it's usually referring to this, and a lot of people don't realize that. But so from my understanding and my research, I think when it says new moon in scripture, I'm not talking about the head of the month but when it's talking about a festival on the new moon,
yep.
It's talking about these seasonal changes. And moon, where we see it's translated as new moon here, you're going to see in the scripture it's translated as new moon also, but it should really be translated as new season, because these are seasonal changes.
And a lot of times it should just be month as well.
Yes.
Instead of new
it's
moon.
usually head of the month.
Yep.
So for some examples of seasons and the new moon being translated for season instead of new moon, in Torah and other books, we have Leviticus 26:4, Numbers 13:20, Deuteronomy 11:4, Job 5:26, and so on and so on. There's many instances where we see new moon should be season.
That's a nice little side nugget, brother. Appreciate that. Hopefully people can write those down. If not, they can hit the rewind button later. All right.
So the scripture actually tells us the moon is 4 seasons.
Yep.
So modern, I guess the Hillel calendar and most of the moon calendars will use the moon for the months. But that's not what the moon was set in the Shamaim for. It's set in the Shamaim for the seasons. And the seasons are also controlling your planting and harvesting, which in turn,
sorry, go ahead.
They all line up with your feast days.
Yep.
If you plant and harvest according to the season of the moon, then you're going to be lined up with your feast days every year.
Yeah, the moon is like a sign and a second witness.
Mm-hmm.
We can look at it like that when it comes to calendar. All right, 28 through 33. Here we go. Get a little more detailed. Here we go. More stuff we don't get in the canon. We get details here. And on account of this, he ordained them for himself as festivals for a memorial forever. And thus are they ordained. And they placed them on the tablets of the Shamayim. Each had 13 weeks. Their memorial passed from one to another, from the first to the second, from the second to the third, from the third to the fourth. And all the days of the command shall be 52 weeks of days. And these shall make the entire year complete. Thus it is engraved and ordained on the tablets of the Shamayim, of the heaven. And there is no neglecting this command for a single year from year to year. And you shall command the children of Israel that day to observe the years according to this reckoning, 364 days. And these shall constitute a complete year, and they shall not disturb its time from its days and from its festivals. For all shall fall out of it in them according to their witness, and they shall not leave out any day nor disturb any festivals. But if they neglect and do not observe them according to this command, then they shall disturb all their seasons, and the year shall be dislodged from this order, and they shall neglect their laws. I know you got something to say on this one.
So 364 days. We see that in Enoch also. But so the moon cycle is 354. That's found in Enoch, and it's also observable. So if you solely go by the moon for your year from one new moon to the next year's first new moon, whether it's before the equinox or after the equinox, however the Hillel calendar does it, I've seen different ways. They're still only observing. They're not observing 52 weeks. They're observing 50 and a half weeks, because they're 10 days shy of 364 days.
And then there's more
That's,
when you have the 13th month.
yep.
Every
So
other
that's
year.
why. Well, that's why they add the 13th month, because every third year, every year they're 10 days behind. So every third
Yep.
year they're 30 days behind. So they have to add the 13th month to make up for that 30 days that they lost.
Yep.
That's not found anywhere in Scripture.
Nope. And when I used to do the lunisolar calendar, that really troubled my spirit because where I was attending at the time, the pastor was like, "All right, we're starting the 13th month," and I'm like, "Where's that in Scripture? I don't see it." Confused. I think there's a lot more order when it comes to the Zadok calendar. All right. I think I read last. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll read. And all the children of Israel shall forget, and shall not find the path of the years, and shall forget the new moons, and seasons, and Sabbaths, and they shall go astray as to all the order of the years. For I know, and from this time on I shall declare it to you. And it is not on my own devising, for the book is written before me, and on the tablets of the Shamaim the divisions of days is ordained, lest they forget the festivals of the covenant, and walk according to the festivals of the Gentiles, after their straying and after their ignorance.
So the first verse is interesting to me. It says, "And all the children of Israel shall forget and shall not find the path of the years, shall forget the new moons, seasons, Sabbaths, and they shall go astray as to all the order of the years." That's the key. There's order in Abba's creation. They all work synergistically together as a perfect timepiece. If we understand how they work, that's the key.
It's easy to forget if you're not using the sun, the moon, and the stars. If you're only going by the moon, which I know most moon calendars do, that they don't reference the stars at all, and they usually don't reference the sun unless it's an equinox. But they really don't go by the equinox.
Let me say this real quick as a caveat before you finish. They do reference the sun for the equinox, but that's about it.
But there's no need to if you're going new moon to new moon.
But they use the sun or the vernal equinox to start the year.
Yeah.
But that's not always 100% the case, like you're saying.
No.
But we see order. We see order. If we have all of them working together. So I think this is the last few verses in the first chapter 6, 36 to 38. "For there shall be those who shall assuredly make observations of the moon." This is where we're going to get where it's 10 days short, which you've already mentioned. "Now it disturbs the seasons and comes in from year to year 10 days too soon. For this reason the year shall come upon them when they shall disturb the order." We keep saying order. It's important. "And make an abominable day, the day of witness, and it being an unclean day, a feast day. And they shall confuse all the days, the Kodesh with the unclean, and the unclean days with the Kodesh. For they shall go astray as to the months and the Sabbaths and the festivals and the Jubilees. For this reason I command and witness to you, that you may witness to them. For after your death your children shall confuse them, so that they shall not make the year 364 days only. And for this reason they shall go astray as to the new moons, seasons, Sabbaths, festivals, and they shall eat all kinds of blood with all kinds of flesh." There you go. That's what you're talking about there. Going back to those sinful, unrighteous ways.
We've all been there. I think we all come from this background, observing moon calendars. I did it in ignorance. I didn't really understand the calendar when I was keeping it until I started researching the calendar, and now I think I understand it fairly well, even their side. We keep the Zadok, which is based on Jubilees and Enoch, but so right here, the 364 days, that is the Zadok calendar, which is only found. I believe it's the only calendar ever found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's no other calendar found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's pretty significant to me.
Not a lunisolar one?
No.
Uh-oh. Ruh-roh, Raggy. But you don't get the detail about 364 days in the canon. You get that in Enoch and Jubilees. So
no, these are pretty harsh words. It calls that the day that they're keeping a feast day an abominable day if they're using the moon, if they're observing the moon for their calendar.
That's pretty stout words.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not saying you shouldn't use the moon. So anybody takes that out of context. The sun, moon, and stars work together.
You don't put the moon ahead of the sun and the stars.
That's the key. It has its place in the Zadok calendar, which is what we think. What we're going by. We're convicted, but you have the sun as the first witness because you saw that in Jubilee. You see that in Jubilees 2:9, and then the moon is the second witness, then the stars as well. They're just different witnesses to show that you're on track, you're doing the right thing. So, since we've been talking about the Zadok calendar, I think it was this Monday. This what you're seeing on screen here is a little deceiving. Zach didn't make it, so you got Matt on the right, and then Micah on the left. Those were the two gentlemen that were able to do the Zadok calendar panel discussion with me, and it's. Were you able to get on there, brother?
Yes, I watched it.
Did it help you at all? Because I know you're well studied in this topic.
Yes, it did help. As a beginner, I think it would help a lot.
So it just a heads up, it is 3 hours long because what I did was I compiled questions, like the most common questions that people have about Zadok calendar, and I just threw the questions at Matt and Micah, and they did their best to answer them very thoroughly, and they did. So there's a lot of nuggets in there if you're studying the Zadok calendar. So I go check that out on my calendar basics playlist. All right, so let's look at a couple verses that we can pull from Jubilee 6 that tie into Torah. So Jubilee 6:10, and Noah and his sons swore that they would not eat any blood that was in any flesh, and he made a covenant before Yahweh Elohim forever throughout all the generations of the earth in this month. But we just read in the last verse that they broke that. So there's that. And then we jump over to Leviticus 17:11-12. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I've given it to you upon the altar to make atonement for your lives. For it is the blood that makes atonement for your life. Therefore I said to the children of Israel, no being among you eats blood, nor does any stranger who sojourns among you eat blood. So here we see in Jubilees and the Torah, we're instructed not to eat blood. And then verses 15-16, Jubilee 6. And he gave Noah and his sons a sign that there should not be a flood on the earth again. He placed his rainbow in the cloud for a sign of the everlasting covenant, that there should not be a flood again on the earth to destroy it all the days of the earth. And then we get the reference in Genesis 9:13-15 about the rainbow in the Torah. I shall set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. And it shall be, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the rainbow shall be seen in the cloud, and I shall remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh, and never again let the waters become a flood to destroy all flesh. Is there anything else you want to touch on with the Zadok calendar and what we read Jubilee 6, or we move forward? Because that's pretty much it for the calendar references.
I believe we can move on. I seen in the comments where they was asking about the seasons verses I give for Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and Job. So what I'm referring to is it doesn't use new moons in these translations. It calls them seasons, but the moons are for seasons, and you can see that in other verses. So if you relate these verses as the moon being for seasons, you can see what the moon's used for, and it's usually planting and harvesting.
Is that the word moed you're referring to?
I'm not sure what it uses in these verses right here. It uses seasons in these verses.
You're talking about the ones we read in Jubilees? Or the ones
the ones I referenced.
Yeah, that's most likely moed. It's translated as appointed or appointed times, but it's also translated seasons, and that's That's one thing people overlook that do the lunisolar calendar. It's also translated season.
So you can see in Psalms 104:19 it does use new moon. But if you go back to, in most translations, but if you go back to the Brentons, and I'm pretty sure the KJV also, it doesn't use new moon, it uses seasons.
Nice. All right, that's a good nugget. Well said, sir. All right, so I guess I'll start. Jubilees 7, 1 through 5. And in the 7th week in the first year, in this Jubilee, no planted vines on the mountain on which the ark had rested, named Lubar, one of the mountains of Ararat. And they produced fruit in the 4th year, and he guarded their fruit and guarded it in this year in the 7th month. And he made wine from them and put it into a vessel and kept it until the 5th year, until the first day on the new moon of the 1st month. And he celebrated with joy the day of the festival. They made a burnt offering to Yahweh, 1 young bull, 1 ram, 7 sheep, each a year old, and a young goat, that he might make atonement thereby for himself and his sons. And he prepared the young goat first, and placed some of its blood on the flesh that was on the altar which he had made. And all the fat he laid on the altar where he had made the burnt offering, and the bull and the ram and the sheep. And he arranged all their flesh on the altar, and he placed all their offerings mixed with oil on it. And afterwards he sprinkled wine on the fire, which he had previously made on the altar. And he placed incense on the altar and caused a sweet fragrance to ascend acceptable before Yahweh his Elohim. So this is interesting. He's making offerings for atonement for himself and his sons.
Yeah.
How's he doing that if he's not a Levitical priest? It does talk about in the Torah that he did make an altar and bring up that sweet fragrance to the Father after he got off the ark. You got anything on that one, brother?
No.
All right.
And he rejoiced and drank of this wine, and he and his children with joy. And it was evening, and he went into his tent, and being drunk, he lay down and slept, and was uncovered in his tent as he slept. And Ham saw Noah his father naked, and went out and told his 2 brothers outside. And Shem took his garment and arose, he and Japheth, and they placed the garment on their shoulders, and went backwards, and covered the shame of their father, and their faces were backward. Noah awoke from his sleep, and knew all that his younger son had done to him. And he cursed his son, and said, Cursed be Canaan. Let him become a servant of servants to his brothers. And he blessed Shem, and said, Blessed be Yahweh Elohim of Shem, and let Canaan become his servant.
Oh, man, there's so many discussions on what happened in that tent. But
all this lines up with Torah. I mean, I haven't seen a discrepancy yet.
I mean, this is almost like Josh was saying last week when we did this. When I got to the end of the chapters, he kept saying copy and paste, copy and paste. I mean, this looks like a copy and paste from Genesis, which we will see that when we get down to this chapter. But whatever happened in that tent, it was something really bad and really abominable and sin, because he said, Cursed be Canaan. Let him become a servant of servants to his brothers. So whatever went down, we can only speculate. We don't really have details, intimate details, pardon the pun.
Whatever it was bad.
Yeah, it was bad and sinful. It is no bueno. 12 through 17. Let Elohim enlarge Japheth, and let Elohim dwell in the dwelling of Shem, and let Canaan become his servant. And Ham knew that his father had cursed his younger son, and he was displeased that he had cursed his son, and he parted from his father. He and his sons with him, Cush, Mitzrayim, and Putz, and Canaan. This is the exact same genealogy in Genesis 10, so that lines up too. And he built a city and called its name after the name of his wife. Ooh, that's a fun one. Ne'elatammuach. If my wife was here, she'd probably done a better job. She's good with those Hebrew names. And Japheth saw it and became envious of his brother. And he too built a city, and he called its name after the name of his wife. And another one. Good thing I got this one, not you. Adataneses. Yeah, all right, we're going to go with that. And Shem dwelt with his father Noah, and he built a city close to his father on the mountain. And he too called its name after the name of his wife, Zadok et Telebab. Hey, I think I got it. Go get a cookie. And see, these three cities are near Mount Lubar, Zadok et Telebab, before the mountain on the east, and Nealatamach on the south, and Adontanes towards the west. We don't have much discussion on this one because it's just a bunch of names that are fun to pronounce.
I'm glad you had that one.
Yeah, me too. Hopefully this one's not. Yeah, there's a few names, but it's not as bad. It's not like 20 letter names.
And the sons of Shem, Elam, and Ashur, and Arpachshad. This son was born 2 years after the flood, and Lud, and Aram, the son of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Yawan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. These are the sons of Noach. And then at 28 Jubilee, Noah began to command his sons, the law and the commands, and all the right rulings that he knew. And he urged his sons to observe righteousness, and to cover the shame of their flesh, and to bless their Creator, and honor father, mother, and love their neighbor, and guard their beings from whoring and uncleanness and all wickedness.
Now, maybe we have an answer of what happened in the tent in this verse, possibly with the text that says, and to cover the shame of their flesh. I'm not saying that's the case, but it's something to consider. A lot of times when there's an instruction after abominable sin, that's because of that. Like in Numbers 15, when the guy goes out and picks up sticks on the Sabbath, then you have the reminder, the tzitzits, to wear as a reminder not to do that kind of stuff. So that's a possibility. And it talks about whoring as well. So maybe not. You got anything on that?
That gives you a good idea of what may have happened. But we just have to speculate because it's not clear.
Yeah, that's all we can do is speculate. So we're not going to sit here for an hour and do that. But it does also say to honor your father and mother here. Love your neighbor. That's Torah. 21:22. For owing to these three matters, the flood came upon the earth. Here we go. We're going to get some details. Namely, due to the whoring by which the watchers against the Torah of their laws went whoring. Now we could back up and say that that's what the whoring mentioned go in verse 20 is. Or it could be about the tent incident. We don't know. Anyways, went whoring after the daughters of men and took wives for themselves of all they chose. And they made the beginning of uncleanness. And they brought forth sons, the Nephilim, which is the Nephilim we see in Genesis 6 and Numbers 13. But they were all evil, and they devoured one another. And the giants slew the Nephil, and the Nephil slew the Elo, and the Elo mankind and one another. So this is a very interesting text when it comes to the different watchers and with the Elo and the Nephil and the what's the other one? Just read it, Matt. Come on, dude.
Nephilim.
Yeah, that was it. Oh, it says mankind. There we go. So you think that's different generations of the Nephilim, or do you think that's different?
Yeah. So we see in Enoch, I think it's chapter 14 or 15. It may be prior to that, where it talks about the Nephilim, and the Nephilim are the first generation from the fallen angels and the daughters of men. And the Nephilim are the next generation From I'm not sure exactly how the genealogy is, but it's the F2 generation. If you breed animals, then you have F1, F2.
Is that kind of like A1, A2 with cows?
No, that's totally different.
Okay. I will learn more of this when I get on a homestead. But I think that could be that with the Alo and the Nephil. I think that could be different generations because in Enoch it says there's which we covered a couple of days ago in the Nephilim stream. They had a 500-year limit put on their lives, so this could be different generations we're seeing here in these verses.
I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Just different generations.
It makes sense to me.
And everyone sold himself to work wickedness and to shed much blood, and the earth was filled with wickedness. And after they sinned against the beast and the birds, and all that moves and walks on the earth, and much blood was shed on the earth, and every inclination and desire men planned worthlessness and evil continually. And Yahweh destroyed all from off the face of the earth because of the wickedness of their deeds, and because of the blood which they had shed in the midst of the earth. He destroyed all, and we were left, and you and I, my sons, and all that entered with us into the ark. And look, I see your works before me, that you do not walk in righteousness, for you have begun to walk in the path of destruction, and you are parting from one another, and are envious of one another. And so it is that you are not in unity, my son, each with his brother. So how do you sin against the beast and the birds?
Genetic manipulation.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That's one way.
Yeah, as manipulating the genes to make different beast.
Chimeras and all that stuff. Man, it's amazing I did this 2 days after doing the Nephilim stream. Tyler, you want to throw that stream in the chat of the one we did Thursday? Thank you, sir. That'd be awesome. I was going to say something about this one. Oh, yeah. Let me read part of 26. And I see your works before me, that you do not walk in righteousness, for you have begun to walk in the path of destruction, and you are parting from one another and are envious of one another. So you see the evil intent of their hearts start to manifest in sinful ways. So it starts with a thought, and in our heart, the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. But it's an intent in our heart and our mind, and then it's an evil action later, or sinful, depending on what we do. So we see that here in this verse. Continuing on, before I look and see the demons, here we go. Where did the demons come from? Have begun their enticements against you and against your children. And now I fear on your behalf that after my death you shall shed the blood of man upon the earth, and that you shall also be destroyed from the face of the earth. For whoever sheds man's blood, and whoever eats the blood of any flesh, that keeps coming up. That's very important. Shall all be destroyed from the earth, and there shall not be left any man that eats blood, or that sheds the blood of man on the earth. Nor shall there be left to him any seed or descendants living of the Shamayim. For they shall go into the grave, and they shall descend into the place of condemnation, and they shall all be removed into the darkness of the deep by a violent death. And no blood is to be seen upon you. Of all the blood there shall be all the days in which you have killed any beast or cattle or whatever flies upon the earth. And you perform a good work toward your beings by covering that which has been shed on the face of the earth. So I was gonna I had a thought. Oh, it left me. You got anything on this? Maybe I'll remember what I was gonna say.
Just a chapter 14 and 15 in Enoch tells us where demons come from.
There we go.
It's pretty interesting read.
So here's a good prime example that the book of Enoch and Jubilees gives us details about the Watchers, or AKA the sons of Elohim, is how it's phrased in Genesis 6:4. We get those details here in Jubilees and Enoch, and we don't get in the canon. That's why I'm doing this series, to help people see that we should consider this book as scripture.
I believe they were part of the canon, especially when Yeshua was here. I think he used these books.
I mean, yeah, I think there's evidence to show that he quoted from Enoch.
Mm-hmm.
Why would he do that?
If you didn't read it, why would you quote from it?
Yep. Vader Bear in the chat said, learning about the unclean spirits changed my life. I would say when I read Jubilee 6, that changed my life, because I had to make some major changes.
Yeah.
With how I reckon the calendar.
I was looking into the calendar when I read 6, and that's what made the turn for me, was Jubilee 6. It spelled it out pretty clear.
I mean, it's crystal clear to me. And then some details in Jubilees 49 as well really helped me. I know it did you too, brother.
Yeah.
We've talked about that many times in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Did I read last or you? I don't remember.
I think I read the last one.
All right. And you shall not be like him who eats with blood. Man, why does that keep coming up? It must be important. But guard yourselves that none may eat flesh before you cover the blood. Maybe it keeps being brought up because the Watchers taught them that, maybe. And he's trying to help them unlearn all that junk they learned from the Watchers, just like in the wilderness. He was trying to teach ancient Israel to unlearn all that pagan stuff they learned from Egypt. For thus have I been commanded to witness to you and your children together with all flesh, and do not allow the life to be eaten with the flesh, that your blood, which is your life, Torah says life is in the blood, may not be required at the hand of any flesh that sheds it on the earth. For the earth shall not be clean from blood, which has been shed upon it. For only through the blood of him that shed it shall the earth be purified throughout all its generations. And now, my children, listen, work right ruling and righteousness, that you may be planted in righteousness over the face of the whole earth, and your esteem lifted up before my Elohim, who saved me from the waters of the flood.
And now, my children, listen, with an exclamation point.
Let's pay attention.
Yep, that's something I need to do more of.
Yep. Agreed.
See, you shall go and build for yourselves cities, and plant them all the plants that are up upon the earth, and also all fruit bearing trees. For 3 years the fruit of all that is eaten shall not be gathered. And in the 4th year its fruit shall be reckoned Kodesh, acceptable before the Most High El, who created the Shamaim and the earth and all matters. Let them offer in abundance the first of the wine and oil as first fruits on the altar of Yahweh, who receives it. And what is left, let the servants of the house of Yahweh eat before the altar which receives it. And in the 5th year you perform the release, so that you release it in righteousness and uprightness, and you shall be righteous, and all that you plant shall prosper. It's pretty good instructions here.
Yep. All that you plant shall prosper. Mm-hmm. You got to go by the moon. That helps. And here we see Enoch again. For so Hanuk, the father of your father commanded Methuselah his son, and Methuselah his son Lamech. And Lamech commanded me all the matters which has his fathers commanded him. And I also shall give you command, my sons, as Hanuk commanded his son in the first. Do you believe? I'm sure. I apologize. I think that should be Jubilee. While still living, the seventh in his generation, he commanded and witnessed to his son and to his son's sons until the day of his death. Oh man, there's a debate in the chat. I'm debating if I should address it or not. I might let it go.
I saw it earlier. I let it go.
Yeah, we'll just move on because there's a lot of scripture that goes against that. So let's look at verses 10 and 11. Noah awoke from his sleep and knew all that his younger son had done to him. And he cursed his son and said, "Cursed be Canaan, let him become a servant of servants to his brothers." And he blessed Shem and said, "Blessed be Yahweh Elohim of Shem, and let Canaan become his servant." And we can see a copy and paste in Genesis 9:24-26. And Noah awoke from his wine, and he knew what his younger son had done to him, and he cursed. And he said, "Cursed is Canaan, let him become a servant of servants to his brothers." And he said, "Blessed be Yahweh, the Elohim of Shem, and let Canaan become his servant." And then we have some text about the post-flood giants in verse 22 of Jubilees 7. And they brought forth sons, the Nephilim, but they were all evil, and they devoured one another. And the giants slew the Nephil, and the Nephil slew the Elo, and the Elo mankind, and one another. And then Numbers 13, 32-33. And they gave the children of Israel an evil report of the land which they had spied out, saying, "The land through which we have gone as species is a land eating up its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw it in are men of great size. And we saw there the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, of the Nephilim, and we were like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and so we were in their eyes." All right. Now you got anything on that, or we'll jump to chapter 8?
We'll go to chapter 8.
All right, you want to go first?
Yep. And in the 29th Jubilee, in the first week, in the beginning of its Arpachshad took a wife, and her name was Raziah, the daughter of Elam, and she bore him a son in the 3rd year and this week. And he called his name Canaan. And the son grew, and his father taught him writing, and he went to seek a place where he might seize a city. And he found a writing which former generations had carved on the stone, on the rock, and he read what was on it, and he transcribed it and sent in regard to it. For it contains the teaching of the watchers in accordance with which they used to observe the signs of the sun and the moon and the stars, in all the signs of the Shamaim. And he wrote down, but said not regarding it, for he was afraid to speak to Noah about it, lest he should be wrath with him because of it.
So this is a very, and let's see, I think my next slide. Yeah, okay, so I don't know if I shared this with you, but I'm gonna share it real quick. So the name here is Canaan, and so you can see this. So this is after the flood, and he found most likely a stone. Does it say rock in here? Yeah, it says rock. So it's a stone. It's something that survived the flood, and it's some of the teachers of the watchers. So the teachings of the watchers, and most likely it has to do with astrology, because it says the sun, to observe the signs of the sun and moon and stars. So that's most likely astrology, because it says that he sinned when he was doing this. So if you look in the genealogies in chapter 10 of Genesis, I believe it was around 24-ish. If you look in the Masoretic text, you will not find this gentleman's name. But if you look in the Septuagint, you will find his name in the genealogy. Why would they do that? Why would they hide his name? Maybe the people that translated Masoretic don't like the book of Jubilees and they're trying to hide it from people.
Yeah, that's
You
what
agree with
that's
that?
what I would think. Hmm. I wonder why they don't like the book of Jubilees.
Because there's stuff against their
maybe
tradition.
chapter 6.
Oh, no, I know he didn't. So if you haven't already checked it out, I did the Nephilim stream a couple days ago. I think Tyler already shared it in the chat. Highly recommend it. It was awesome. All right, so 5 through 9. And in the 30th Jubilee, in the second week, in the first year, he took a wife, and her name was Melchah, the daughter of Medai, son of Japheth. And in the 4th year, he brought forth a son and called his name Shelach. For he said, truly I have been sent. And Shelach grew up and took a wife, and her name was Muach, the daughter of Kesed, his father's brother, in the 31st Jubilee, in the 5th week, in the 1st year. And she bore him a son in the 5th year, and he called his name Eber. That's a significant name. And he took a wife for himself, and her name was Azurad, the daughter of Nebrod, in the 32nd Jubilee, in this 7th week, in the 3rd year. And in the 6th year, she bore him a son and called his name Peleg. What does that mean? Divide?
Earthquake.
Maybe? The what?
Earthquake.
I think it means division too, doesn't it? Yeah, but it definitely means
I'm pretty sure it does.
harvest, earthquake. Because in the next text it says, after his name's mentioned, for the days when he was born, the children of Noah began to divide the earth among themselves. For this reason, he called his name Peleg, and they divided it secretly among themselves and told it to Noah. So here's an example, just like many times in the Torah, where you see a name and it's significant for what's going on during that time period. Peleg being one. Oh man! All right, you got this one, brother.
And it came to be, and it came to being the beginning of the 33rd Jubilee that they divided the earth into these 3 parts for Shem and Ham and Japheth, according to the inheritance of each, in the 1st year, in the 1st week, when one of us who had been sent was with them, and he called his sons, and they came near to him, they and their children, and he divided the earth into lots, which his 3 sons were to take in possession. Coming, they reached out of their hands, and took the writing of the bosom of Noah their father. And there came forth on the writing of Shem's lot the middle of the earth, which he should take as an inheritance for himself and for his sons for the generations forever, from the middle of the mountain range of Rapha, from the mouth of the water, from the river Tina. And his portion goes towards the west through the midst of this river, and it extends till it reaches the waters of the abysses, and out which his river goes forth and pours its waters into the sea meet, and this river flows into the great sea. And all that is towards the north is Japheth, and all that is towards the south belongs to Shem.
That's a funny name. I'm sure it's Miat or something, but
yeah,
that's how we read it.
Yeah,
meat. I'm sure it has nothing to do with flesh of an animal. Oh man! So here we get a bunch of details of who got this plot of land, so on and so forth. And I think most of chapter 9 is like that too. And it extends till it reaches Carasso. This is the bottom of the tongue, which looks towards the south. And its portion extends all along the Great Sea. And it extends in a straight line till it reaches the west of the tongue, which looks toward the south. For this sea is named the tongue of the Mitzrite Sea. And it turns from here towards the south, towards the mouth of the Great Sea on the shore of its waters. and it extends to the west of Afrah, and it extends to it reaches the waters of the river Gihon, and to the south of the waters of Gihon, to the banks of this river, and it extends toward the east till it reaches the Garden of Eden, to the south from there, and from the east of the whole land of Eden and of the whole east, it turns to the east and proceeds till it reaches the east of the mountain named Rapha, and it descends to the bank of the mouth of the river Tanah, or Tina. I'm sure it's not Tina.
This portion came forth by lot for Shem and his sons, that they should possess it forever unto his generations forever. And Noah rejoiced at this portion came forth for Shem and for his sons, and he remembered all that he had spoken with his mouth in Nebuah. Before he had said, Blessed be Yahweh Elohim of Shem, and let Yahweh dwell in the dwelling of Shem. And he knew that the Garden of Eden is the most Kodesh place in the dwelling of Yahweh, and Mount Sinai in the center of the desert, and Mount Zion, the center of the navel of the earth. These three were created as Kodesh places, facing each other. And he blessed the Elohim of mighty ones, who had put the word of Yahweh into his mouth, and Yahweh be everlasting. And he knew that a blessed portion and a blessing had come to Shem and his sons to the generations forever. The whole land of Eden, and the whole land of the sea of reeds, and the whole land of the east, and Hadu, and on the sea of reeds, and the mountains thereof, and all the land of Bashan, and all the land of Lebanon, and the islands of Kaftur, and all the mountains of Senir, and Amanah, and the mountains of Ashur is in the north, and all the land of Elam, Ashur and Babel, and Shushan, and Madai, and all the mountains of Ararat, and all regions beyond the sea, which is beyond the mountains of Ashur toward the north, a blessing and spacious land, and all that is in it is very good.
So here we have, I believe, the first mention of Babel in Jubilees. And we will see in chapter 10 where they build that infamous tower. So it's interesting. It talks about the Garden of Eden in here. Wonder if that was in the center of the earth where it's located. What do you think?
I'm not sure about that.
I don't know. A lot of what?
I hadn't done a whole lot of studying on the placement of where everything is as far as the maps.
There's some people that think it was because of Polaris's location and it being under Polaris, possibly being under his throne. So that's what, I don't know, but that's what some people think or speculate from their research. It's fun to think about. And for Ham came forth the second portion beyond the Gihon towards the south to the right of the garden, and it extends toward the south, and it extends to all the mountains of fire. And it extends towards the west to the sea of Atel, and it extends towards the west till it reaches the sea of Moab. That sea into which all which is not destroyed descends, and it extends towards the north to the limits of Gadir. And it extends to the coast of the waters of the sea, to the waters of the great sea, till it draws near to the river Gihon, and passes along the river Gihon till it reaches the right of the Garden of Eden. And this is the land which come forth for Ham as the portion which he was to occupy forever. He and his sons still their generations forever. It's interesting what happens in in the Torah and in Joshua in the land of Canaan with some of Ham's sons.
And for Japheth came forth the third portion beyond the river Tanah to the north of the outflow of its waters, and it extends northeasterly, so that the whole region of Gog and to all the country east of there, and it extends northly to the north, and it extends to the mountains of Kelt toward the north, and towards the east of Moak, and it extends to the east of Gadur, as far as the region of the waters of the sea, and it extends until it approaches the west of Farah, and it returns towards Apharag, and it extends easterly to the waters of the sea of Miat, and it extends to the regions of the river of Tanah in a northeasterly direction until it approaches the boundary of its waters towards the mountain of Rapha, and it turns round towards the north. This is the land which came forth for Japheth and his sons as a portion of inheritance, which he should possess for himself and his sons, to their generations forever, 5 great islands, and a great land in the north. But it is cold, and the land of Ham is hot, and the land of Shem is neither hot nor cold, but it is mixed of cold and heat.
Wonder where Shem's descendants went to. Interesting. Yeah, that verse is very interesting, where the land of Ham is hot and the land of Shem is neither hot nor cold.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. If you look at some of the where these peoples went from these seeds.
I'd like to map this out on a piece of paper to kind of see where everything is.
And I will say, what we're reading, it's very detailed. Just like a lot of the stuff in the Torah is very detailed. Again, I think it's the same person writing all this stuff. So let's look at, again, we're going to looking at the watchers. So verses 3 and 4 out of what chapter we just read in 8. And he found a writing which former generations had carved on the rock, and he read what was on it, and he transcribed it and sinned in regard to it, for it contained the teachings of the watchers in accordance with which they used to observe the signs of the sun and the moon and the stars and all the signs of the Shamayim. And he wrote it down, but said nothing regarding it, for he was afraid to speak to Noah about it, lest he should be wroth with him because of it. And then in the infamous Genesis 6, 4, and 5 text, the nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of Elohim came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, the men of name. And Yahweh saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. So the watchers were teaching mankind what we read about in Jubilees 8 and other stuff. But we get details here in Jubilees 8 we don't get in Genesis 6. And we'll jump to, if you got something else, to jump to chapter 9.
Go ahead, chapter 9.
Verse 1 through 4. And Ham divided among his sons, and the first portion came forth for Cush, towards the east, and to the west for him for Mitzrayim, for Egypt, and to the west of him for Put, and to the west of him on the sea of Canaan. And Sheri also divided among his sons, and the first portion came forth for Elam and his sons to the east of the river Tigris, till it approaches the east. The whole land of Hodu and all the sea of reeds on its coast, and the waters of Dedan, and all the mountains of the Mebri and Elah, and all the land of Shushan, and all that is on the side of Farnak, to the sea of reeds, and the river Tinah, and for Ashur came forth the second portion, all the land of Ashur and Nineveh, and Shinar. There's that city, and to the border of Hodu, and it ascends and surrounds the river. And for Arpachshad came forth the third portion, all the land of the region of the Kasdim, to the east of the Perath, bordering on the sea of reeds, and all the waters of the desert, close to the tongue of the sea, which looks towards Mitzrayim, all the land of Lebanon and Sinir and Armana to the border of Parath. Good thing you didn't have that one either.
And for Aram there came forth the fourth portion, all the land of Aram, Naharaim, between the Tigris and the Perath, to the north of the Kasdim, to the border of the mountains of Ashur, and the land of Ararah. And there came forth Lud, the fifth portion, the mountains of Ashur, and all belonging to them, till it reaches the great sea, until it reaches the east of Ashur his brother. And Japheth I also divided the land of his inheritance among his sons. And the first portion came forth for Gomorrah, to the east from the north side to the river Tanah. And in the north there came forth for Magog all the inner portions of the north, until it reaches the sea of Miat. And for Madah came forth as his portion, that he should possess from the west of his two brothers to the islands, and to the coast of the islands. And for Yawan came forth the fourth portion, every island, and the islands which are towards the border of Lud.
And Nick Dodona in chat said there are some very old maps that give credence to this. If you could share a link, brother, in the chat, that would be awesome. I would love to see those maps. I'm sure Drew would too.
Yes, I would. That would put all this together and make it a lot easier to understand.
Yep, I agree. Visuals are awesome. 11 through 15. And for Tubal, there came forth the fifth portion in the midst of the tongue, which approaches towards the border of the portion of Lud to the second tongue, to the region beyond the second tongue to the third tongue. And for Meshech came forth the sixth portion, all the region beyond the third tongue, till it approaches the east of Gadir. And for Tyrus there came forth the seventh portion, for great islands in the midst of the sea, which reached to the portion of Ham. And thus the sons of Noah divided to their sons in the presence of Noah their father, and he bound them all by an oath, proclaiming a curse. So apparently your word was very important back then. So we keep seeing the word oath, and we see it in Enoch too, but not today, sadly. Let's see where it was. Proclaiming a curse on everyone that sought to seize the portion which had not fallen to him by his lot. And they all said, so be it, for themselves and their sons forever, throughout their generations, till the day of judgment, on which Yahweh Elohim shall judge them with sword and with fire for all the unclean wickedness of their strayings, with which they had filled the earth, with transgression and uncleanness and whoring and sin. What you got on this one, brother?
Whoring and sin. That's a repeat throughout what we've been reading today with transgression and sin. So it must have been pretty common.
Yeah, back then.
Just as it is today.
Interesting. As in the days of Noah. There's some relevance to that verse and what we're reading today. I think that's all of this one. That was a short chapter. So I'm going to reference back to Jubilees 8, even though we read Jubilees 9. He's just talking about the breakdowns of who gets this piece of land, this plot of land. So in 8:10 it says, and it came to be beginning of the 33rd Jubilee that they divided the earth into three parts. This is an interesting detail. For Shem, Ham, and Japheth, according to the inheritance of each, in the first year, in the first week, when one of us who had been sent was with them. And in Genesis 9:18 and 19. And the sons of Noah who went out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and all the earth was overspread from them. So you don't get the specific breakdown of who got the land in the Genesis passage, but it's the same story basically. And last but not least, we got chapter 10, 1 through 3. And in In the third week of this Jubilee, the unclean demons began to lead astray the children of the sons of Noah and to mislead and destroy them. And the sons of Noah came to Noah their father, and they informed him concerning the demons which were leading astray and binding and slaying his sons' sons. And he prayed before Yahweh his Elohim, and said, Elohim of the spirits of all flesh, who has shown kindness to me, and has saved my sons, and I from the waters of the flood, and has not caused me to perish as you did the sons of destruction. For your favor has been great towards me, and your kindness has been great to my being. Let your favor be lifted upon my sons, and let not wicked spirits rule over them, lest they should destroy them from the earth. So we're talking about unclean demons, spirits. Where'd they come from?
Nephilim.
The Watchers.
The only place you find that is in Enoch. Which is another reason why I think it's not in the canon today.
Unless you're Ethiopian.
Yeah.
And you grow up in their culture.
But may you bless my sons and I, that we may increase and multiply and fill the earth. And you know how your watchers, the fathers of the spirits, acted in my day. And as for the spirits which are living, imprison them and hold them fast in the place of condemnation, and let them not bring destruction on the sons of your servant, my Elohim. So these are evil and created in order to destroy. And let them not rule over the spirits of the living, for you alone exercise rule over them. And let them not have power over the sons of the righteous from this time and forever.
And here we see the Watchers again. Gotta watch out for them.
It says that we rule over the spirits. So, unless you let them in, they can't be a part of your life.
I mean, yeah, Yeshua talked about that you have power over them. And if you a most common gateway that we open nowadays with our entertainment infused society is you sit there and watch a movie that's promoting sin, has witchcraft, whatever, abominable lifestyles. You're opening yourself up for these unclean spirits or demons to enter. So we do have power over them, but we can also easily open ourselves up to them.
That's why we always have to pray against it.
Spiritual warfare is very important. Yep. We should always pray against it. And Yeshua even said this kind only goes out through prayer and fasting. He's talking about demons or unclean spirits coming out. Let's see. Okay. And Yahweh our Elohim commanded us to bind all. And the chief of the spirits, Mastema, there he is, came and said, Adonai, Creator, let some of them remain before me, and let them listen to my voice, and do all that I shall say to them. For if some of them are not left to me, I shall be able to execute the power of my purpose on the sons of men. But these are for corruption and leading astray. I mean, he's getting down to it, explaining what their purpose is. For these are for corruption and leading astray before my right ruling, for the wickedness of the sons of man is great. And he said, let the 10th part of them remain before him, and let 9 parts descend into the place of condemnation. So Mastema, which in Book of Jubilees is a representation of Satan, and he's begging the Father, like, no, don't take all my unclean spirits, all these watchers, don't take them all. Can I keep a 10th? I need to do my purpose on here, on this earth of leading astray.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it plainly says it in here, what their purpose is.
And one of us he commanded that we should teach all their medicines, for he knew that they with not walking up brightness. I think that's supposed to be walking up righteousness, right? Nor strive in righteousness.
Yep, sorry.
Nor strive in righteousness, and we did according to all his words, all the wicked evil ones we bound in the place of condemnation, and a tenth part of them we left that they might be subject before Satan on the earth. And we explained to know all the medicines of their diseases, together with their accomplishments, how he might heal them with herbs of the earth. And Noah wrote down all matters in a book as we instructed him concerning every kind of medicine. Thus the evil spirits were prevented from hurting the sons of Noah. And he gave all that he had written to Shem, his oldest son, for he loved him exceedingly above all his sons.
Yeah, and here we can see in verse 13 what you were talking about. Thus the evil spirits were prevented from hurting the sons of Noah. So we have protection over us unless we allow them in, like we've been talking about.
I'd like to find that book of Noah of the herbs.
Yep. Somebody in the chat said I want that book. I don't know what you're talking about, Harley. Harley's in the chat. 15 through 17. And Noah slept with his fathers and was buried on Mount Lubar in the land of Ararat. 950 years he completed in his life, 19 jubilees in 2 weeks, and 5 years. Boy, they lived so long back then. And in his life on earth, he excelled the children of men, except Hanok. There's Enoch again, because of the righteousness wherein he was perfect. For Hanok's office was ordained for a witness to the generations of the world, so that he should recount all the deeds of generation after generation to the day of judgment. It's very interesting how every time you see in Jubilees, Enoch or Hanok is held in high esteem.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very cool.
The book of Enoch does the same thing. It holds him in high regard.
He was a righteous dude.
And it lines up with this right here, too. He is the scribe of unrighteousness. He writes down all of men's sin.
Yeah, that's very interesting, too.
Also not just men's, but the fallen angels.
Yeah, there's a lot of info about that. Fallen angels or watchers in Enoch. Jubilees touches on it a little bit, but nothing compared to Enoch.
And in the 33rd Jubilee, in the first year, in the second week, Peleg took a wife, whose name was Lamnah, the daughter of Sinar, and she bore him a son in the 4th year of this week. And he called his name Reu, for he said, See, the children of men have become evil through the wicked purpose of building for themselves a city and a tower in the land of Shinar. For they departed from the land of Ararat eastward to Shinar. For in his days they built the city and the tower, saying, Come, let us ascend thereby into the Shamaim. And they began to build, and in the 4th week they made brick with fire, and the bricks served them for stone. And the clay which they cemented them together was asphalt, which comes out of the sea, and out of the fountains of the waters in the land of Shinar. And they built it. 43 years they were building it. Its breadth was 203 bricks, and the height of a break was the third.
Should be brick, sorry.
Okay, and the height of a brick was the third of one. Its height amounted to 5,433 amnah and 2 tofah, and the extent of the wall was 13 stades, and the other 13 stades. 30 stades.
So they were working on that joker for 43 years. And they were giants back then, so there's no I think that's part of how they helped it. It was built was with the labor of some of the giants or fallen angels. And they were working 43 years on it.
Then it got smashed.
Yeah, there's no telling. Yeah, we'll see that in a few verses later. But there's no telling how big it really was. We have depictions that we can speculate on how big it was. If you just Google Tower of Babel, I mean, there's artistic renderings, but we can speculate on how tall it was just by, and we can look at the measurements that are given here, but I mean, it had to be massive, like probably many times bigger than whatever the biggest skyscraper is in the world right now. I think it's in, what's that town across the pond, or that city? I'm drawing a blank. Oh well. Man, I can't believe I can't think of it. I'll think of it now or later. I'm not even on here. But there's a lot of huge buildings. I would say those are small in comparison, and we don't have nephilim helping to build them either.
How big is an amah?
I think it is. It's one of the cubit measurements.
So it's from the elbow to the tip of the finger.
I'm not saying exactly a cubit, but I think it's in the cubit family.
Okay.
So we'd have to work on figuring the measurements out later. And Yahweh our Elohim said to us, see, they are one people, and this they begin to do, and now naught shall be withheld from them. Come, let us go down to confuse their language. Here we go. Now we'll have to say, it says go down. So how does this text work on a globe? Just saying. Come, let us go down to confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech, and that they may be dispersed into cities and nations, and one purpose shall no longer endure them with them till the day of judgment. And Yahweh descended, and we descended with him to see the city and the tower which the children of men had built. And he confused their language, and they no longer understood one another's speech. And they ceased then to build the city and the tower. For this reason, the whole land of Shinar, it is called Babel, which means confusion, because there Yahweh confounded all the language of the children of men, and from there they were dispersed into their cities, each according to his language and his nation. And Yahweh sent a mighty wind against the tower and overthrew it upon the earth. And see, it was between Ashur and Babylon in the land of Shinar, and they called its name Overthrow. So we can see that, let's see. Was it in the last one? But anyways, they were. So this happened, that it all went down. The tower went crumbling down, and they were sent to the four corners of the earth pretty much. And so all that sinful occultic doctrine, they took it with them. So that's why we see all these similar beliefs or teachings in all these different world religions, the same stuff, because it all originated from Babylon. And this is, I would have to say, the first one world order. Well, they're all unified. I mean, unity is not always a good thing. If it's for the kingdom's sake, sure, but unity is not always a good thing. And now they're trying to come together again and do another world order. Got anything on that, brother?
I've always speculated that the giants helped build this, but this right here says to see the city and the tower which the children of men had built.
That's a good point.
So, I mean, maybe they was instructed by the giants to build it, but the men built it. Actually, this was after.
I'm sorry, I saw a comment that made sense. Nate the Donut said, Yahweh does not cause confusion, but in this case, he made an exception. That's true. Very true. So we're getting close to the end. Did you read last or me?
You just read.
Okay. You got this one?
In the 4th week, in the beginning of the first year, in the 34th Jubilee, they were dispersed from the land of Shinar, and Ham and his sons went into the land which he was to occupy, which he acquired in his portion of the land of the south. And Canaan saw the land of Lebanon to the river of the Mitzrayim, that it was very good. But he did not go into the land of his inheritance to the west, that is, to the sea. But he dwelt in the land of Lebanon, eastward and westward, from the border of Jordan and from the border of the sea. And Ham his father, and Cush and Mitzrayim his brothers, said to him, You have settled in the land which is not yours, and which did not fall to us by lot. Do not do so, for if you do so, you and your sons shall fall in the land and be accursed through rebellion. For by rebellion you have settled, and by rebellion your children shall fall, and you shall be rooted out forever.
So I guess we should be obedient, huh?
Mhm.
Muy importante. I mean, they were taking land that wasn't theirs. And they already had an oath about that. So
They broke the oath.
keep your word, keep your oath if you're going to do it. Bad things happen to you. Do not dwell in the dwelling of Shem, for to Shem and to his sons it came by their lot. Cursed are you, and cursed shall you be over all the sons of Noah, with the curse by which we bound ourselves with an oath in the presence, there we go, of the Kodesh judge, and in the presence of Noah our father. But he did not listen to them, and dwelt in the land of Lebanon from Hamath, as far as the entrance of Mitzrayim, he and his sons to this day, and for this reason that land is named Canaan. So it's not exactly a blessed land.
No. And Japheth and his sons went towards the sea, and dwelt in the land of their portion. And Madai saw that the land of the sea, and it did not please him, and begged a portion from Elam and Ashur and Arpachshad, his brother's wife, and he worked in the land of Madai, near to his wife's brother to this day. And he called his dwelling, and the dwelling of his sons, Madai, after the name of their father, Madai.
Well, I don't have any deep revelations to share on this one.
I don't either.
Oh, darn. All right, so let's look at the comparisons of stuff in this chapter and the Torah. So let's look at verse 8. And the chief of the priests, Mastema, came and said, Adonai, Creator, let some of them remain before me, and let them listen to my voice, and do all that I shall say to them. For if some of them are not left to me, I shall not be able to execute the power of my purpose on the sons of men. For these are for corruption and leading astray before my right ruling, for the wickedness of the sons of men is great. And then go back to, we're going to look at Genesis 3, 1 through 3. And the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field which Yahweh Elohim had made. And he said to the woman, Is it true that Elohim has said, Do not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, We are to eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim has said, Do not eat of it, nor touch it, lest you die. So Satan can only do what Abba allows him to do. So Abba allowed him in the garden to deceive Eve and Hawa, or Adam and Eve. And then we'll look at 18 and compare that to the Tower of Babel story in Genesis 11, Jubilees 10, 18. And in the 33rd Jubilee, in the first year, in the second week, Peleg took a wife whose name was Lomna, the daughter of Sinar. And she bore him a son in the 4th year of this week, and he called his name Reu. For he said, See, the children of men have become evil through the wicked purpose of building for themselves a city and a tower in the land of Shinar. And in Genesis 11:4, And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens, and make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered over all the face of the earth." So, another example, Jubilee sounds just like Torah.
Little Genesis.
That's sadly that's what they refer to it as.
Yeah.
Which is shameful to me.
Yeah, it's actually got more. To me, it's got a lot more detail than Genesis does.
I agree. From some things. Well, you got any last parting words of wisdom before we jump off here? Since we're done with our reading.
No, I think that's it. I do think that Jubilees is scripture. It's kind of hard to refute that. It was. I don't remember exactly if it was number 3 or number 6 on the most copies found in the Qumran caves, but it was definitely up there and higher than a lot of stuff that's found in canon.
Yeah, a lot of the books are found in the canon.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to see if it says anything about that in the front of here. Just a reminder, I've used the Hallelujah Scriptures Jubilees versions when I'm doing my presentations on this series. It says between 1947 and 1956, approximately 15 Yobelim or Jubilee scrolls were found in 5 caves at Qumran, among what are known as Dead Sea Scrolls, all written in Hebrew. The large quantity of manuscripts, more than for any biblical books except for Psalms, Deuteronomy, Isaiah, Exodus, and Genesis, in descending order, indicates that Jubilees was widely used as Qumran. So that's only 5 books in the canon that had more scrolls or fragments than Jubilees. That's pretty significant to me.
So it was number 6.
Yep.
That's pretty significant to me too. I don't know how you can say this is not scripture, and they had that many scrolls found in the caves. I mean, that they held it a pretty high regard to have that many copies.
I think that's a good way to end. So thanks, brother, for coming on, and thanks everybody in the chat. That's an interesting conversation in the chat this time about a topic I decided not to touch on in the middle of the stream. So I will have to say Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Everyone have an amazing rest of your Sabbath. Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.